So yeah, got the carburetor back on the bike with its new StayUp float and the hard anodized throttle slide. So that's all great, I thought. But turned the fuel on, and fuel just started pouring straight out of the bottom of the carb. I thought the float was set about in the right place on the bench, but obviously it was hitting the top of the float chamber before it was pushing down on the valve against its seat and sealing it. So that was obviously wrong. So I took it off again, bent the stainless steel part of the StayUp float, put it back together, and sure enough, it's now sealing properly as it should. So it's all sealed now, but looking at the instructions that came with the StayUp float, it talks about the float level, the correct float level for a Mark 1 concentric carburetor is 0.21 inches plus or minus 40 thou, so below the top edge of the float bowl. So I thought I might as well check that. 0.21 inches is 5.3 mil, and obviously 40 thou is roughly a millimetre. So it's pretty broad, really. It's 5 and a bit mil, plus or minus a mil. But I thought I'd check it anyway, as I say. So to do that, my carb has the plug in the bottom of the float bowl. So I thought I'd use that. So that's the plug out of the bottom of my carb. Apparently those were introduced in 1970. So I think the earlier ones don't have this drain plug, but luckily I've got one. So what I've done is buy a rubber bung, a laboratory style bung, which was about £1 off eBay. I've progressively cut it down to leave this part, and I found a bit of plastic tube and some flexible tube that fitted in there. So that is now about the right size to fit in the place where the plug would normally go on the underside of the carb. So the plan is to plug it up with this bung and use this tube to measure the float, well, measure the fuel level in the float chamber. So let's give that a go. So for a start, 5.3 mil is about there. That'll do. So it's not a huge amount. So that's below the top of the float chamber, which is there. So the level of the fuel, I reckon, should be about here, plus or minus a millimetre. So it's quite a broad spread. Let's see if that is actually the case. So here's my bung with its tube. The plug is out. The main jet, by the way, comes down quite a long way. You can actually feel it just inside there, just the top of the threads. So this bung needs to be cut off quite short, otherwise it fouls the bottom of the main jet. Okay, so the bung is in. Here's the rest of the tube. See what happens when I turn on the fuel. Some air bubbles in there, but according to that is way too low. That's crazy. It's what, a good 15 mil, 12 mil below where it should be. So that doesn't look right. So I'll whip it off and bend the float. So it looks like I'm swinging from one extreme to the other. So when I first put this in without touching the stainless steel section, it was just flooding terribly. So I bent it down, and I've obviously bent it too far, so I've gone from one extreme to the other. So that is better, but it's still too low by 5 mil perhaps. It's only outside the plus or minus 1 tolerance. So one more tweak I think should do it. So adjusting this float level, I've realised that a good way of doing it is to use a pair of long nose pliers. If you lay those across the fork to the back of the float, you get a good sense of what the level currently is and how you can adjust it. So this time I need to raise the level slightly so I can move the tip of the pliers down the float, and I know how much I've done it by the relative position of the tip of the pliers. So bending that slightly. Yeah, that's a bit further down now. So I know that it's moved. I'm hoping that it's the right amount. Soon find out back in the carburetor. So hinge back in. Pick up the needle. If I can. Come on. There we go. Back in the slot. Right, let's try that back on the bike. Yeah, that looks good. It's pretty much bang on. Certainly within plus or minus 1 millimeter. So yeah, I think that's good enough. So very happy with that. I guess it's one of the pros and cons of having an adjustable float level is you need to adjust it. I say when I put the float in, the StayUp float in for the first time without having adjusted it at all, fuel was pouring out of this little hole here, this little relief hole. It actually squirts out. So it definitely needs to be adjusted out of the box. But looks to be done now. Very happy with that. This technique with the bung in the bottom of the float chamber seems to have worked pretty well. I'm quite pleased with that. So I can take out the bung now, if I can get it out, and put the, there we go, put the proper drain plug in the bottom. Gasket looks okay, and be fairly confident that the fuel level is close to where it should be, so it's safe to draw judgments on the jetting and the needle position. Just find a screwdriver and do that up, and then we're all done. Good, okay, thanks for watching.